name is Gwilliam, and today, as you've seen by the title of the video, we are going to go through my tips and just advice on if you're wanting to pass your driving test. Now again, it's been a while since I've said this, but sorry if the camera is shaky, because I am in the car, and what other car than my first car is a perfect one to speak about in this video. And now, before I get into the main bulk of the video, the topic, this is the first one going up on the channel after my little hiatus from YouTube. It's nothing wrong. It's just that I found it very difficult to film content during lockdown. We are still in lockdown here in the UK. However, under the new guidelines, it is okay to go for a drive. That's at least how I understand it anyway. But we won't go into any lockdown or political things in today's video. I'm working hard to try and make as many videos as possible, so when I reboot the channel, you guys have lots of content to enjoy, and hopefully on a consistent basis. Now with that out the way, let's get back into the channel and start with the tips that I have for passing a driving test. Now it's not as simple as just passing your driving test, as we go past a very nice Land Rover Defender 90. First thing you got to consider is the costs, because getting driving lessons and passing a driving test is expensive, or at least it can be expensive. So first thing you really need to do is see if you can afford and see if you can commit to trying to pass your driving test. Because if you, let's say, have enough money for a few lessons but you're not ready, but then you don't have the money to pay for any more lessons, having those weeks, months off may reset your progress, and those first few lessons might be wasted. So make sure you have enough money that you'll be able to pay for enough lessons that you'll be confident to pass your test. And that is the first thing out of the way. That's the boring one that no one seems to really talk about, but you always need to make sure you can afford your lessons, essentially, because they are probably the most important part of your driving test. So now you've decided you definitely want to go and try and learn to pass your driving test, and you want to drive a car like I am doing now, you then need to, I would recommend first looking into the theory. I did a 5-day intensive course because I wanted to pass my test as quick as possible, and that included the theory. So you would learn to pass the theory test while you were doing that 5-day intensive course. Now that was great for me, but that might not be what you want to do with your driving lessons and your test. So I would recommend first looking into the theory. There are many different ways you can practice theory. It's a little bit like a test at school. You have to get, I believe it's still the same, so 46 marks, is it 43? Sorry, 46 is what I got. 43 out of 50 in your theory test on the multiple choice questions, of which there are many hundreds of questions that you could be faced with. So it's good to revise a little bit like you're trying to pass a test for school. And also there is a hazard perception section of the test, which I believe is out of 75 marks. I got 66, and to pass you only need 44. However, hazard perception is a very weird thing to jump into when you're just taking your test. You've not done hazard perception before. You walk in, you do your theory test, hazard perception comes up, you are not going to pass. So I recommend trying to practice your hazard perception as well as your theory and the multiple choice questions. So how would I go about doing this? Well, the first thing is look at online. There are many places online. Amazon, probably, eBay, many other online retailers will probably sell kits. So there's either a book or a DVD or something along those lines, where it entails all the information you need to know to pass your theory test for a driving test in the UK. Now obviously this video is for people in the UK. Unfortunately, I know about things in the UK, in other countries may differ, I'm not too sure. So in the UK, that's what you need to do to pass your theory test. I recommend not practicing too much, because you will wear yourself out, exactly the same as at school, doing a test at school. And I also recommend that, as I say, try and make sure the program that you buy has hazard perception in it, because hazard perception is a very important part of your driving test, and if you aren't able to practice it, you will really struggle on the day of your theory test. So let's say, for argument's sake, you've passed your theory test now, you've revised for it, you've worked towards it for a few weeks, and what you've done is you've gone to go and get your theory test and you've passed. Now, a theory test is valid for 2 years in the UK, so you have 2 years from the date you pass your driving theory test to be able to pass your practical test, which is the test where you are behind the wheel of a car. So let's say you've done that now, so all you want to do now is pass your test in the practical bit in the car. So the first thing you need to find is an instructor. So again, I did my 5-day intensive course, and that also involved the practical test, as you would imagine. Now, the easiest way, the way I found my instructor and the way I did my test was just online. Go onto Google, or other search engines are available. Just search up driving instructors near me, as I reverse because I'm in a country lane. So search up driving instructors near me. Find a good one. Thank you. Yep. And basically that's what you want to do, is find one that's not too far away. So mine was within walking distance. I think it was a 10, maybe 15-minute walk from my house, and that is a good thing. If you can find one that is within walking distance from your house, it will make things a lot easier. The instructor won't have to come and pick you up, although most instructors will be happy to do that if you're far away. And you will also be able to sort of get into the zone of trying to drive, basically. So that walk might give you a chance to relax, and a lot of people may be stressed when taking their lessons, and that is something that your instructor should be making sure you are not stressed. However, if you are during the lessons, always remember that you are learning. There is an L plate on the back of your car for a reason, and other drivers see that L plate and see that you are learning. So making mistakes is completely normal. One common misconception is that stalling a car is a bad thing. Now, obviously, in the car scene, but people who enjoy cars like me, sometimes, especially friends, we laugh at each other for stalling cars. Everyone does it. But especially when you're learning, it is not something to be embarrassed about. It's not something you should be worried about either, because stalling a car is completely normal, especially when you're not used to it. And when you jump into your car that you learn to drive your test, that will be different to your first car, that will be different to your next car. So stalling a car, especially in a manual, is completely normal. Now, speaking of a manual gearbox, you have two options when taking a test in the UK, a practical test that is, and you can either pass the test in a manual vehicle with a stick shift, as you Americans call it, or a gear shift, where you have a clutch pedal and you have a gear stick in the middle which changes gears. It's also known as a manual. Now, the other option is an automatic. Now, this removes the stick in the middle. There is still a stick in the middle, but there's no gears on it. You just go into neutral, park, reverse, simple things like that. And there is no clutch pedal in an automatic car. It's just a go pedal and a stop pedal. Simple as that. And if you pass in a manual, it gives you the right to also drive automatic cars. However, if you pass in an automatic car, you do not have the right on your license to drive a manual vehicle, which is why I would recommend, if at all possible, to pass your test in a manual car and to get a manual driver's license, because it means that if you want to drive an automatic, you're more than welcome to. However, if you pass in an automatic, it cuts off a lot of cars that you cannot drive. However, if you're watching this video in like 10, 20, 30 years time, if YouTube's even still around then, most cars will probably be electric, and electric cars don't have manual gearboxes anyway, so that won't be a problem if you're watching this video in like 2037 or something. But I would recommend, as of now, passing in a manual car. So now that's out of the way, you've found your instructor online, you've decided what car you want to pass in. Is it a manual? Is it an automatic? And now you're going to do your lessons. So I think I did a few lessons before my intensive course. So I did 2 hours, 2-hour lessons, which is theoretically 2 lessons put into one, because lessons are usually on an hourly basis when you're trying to pass your test. And I think I did 3 or 4 of those before I went into my intensive course. Now, overall, I did about, I think it was 26 to 30 hours, I think it was, including the course. something like that. However, I think for me personally, that was overkill. I didn't need as many lessons as I had because before the end of the 5-day course, I was already ready, which is great. And if you are ready earlier, again, that's great. However, it is not a thing to be ashamed of if it takes you a lot longer to learn and be confident enough to pass your test. And that is a very important thing to know, is that you must be confident in yourself. If your instructor thinks you're ready, it means you're probably ready. If you don't think you're ready, it means you're not confident enough. Confidence is key in a driving test, as we'll get onto when we speak about the test itself. So then, next step, you've got your lessons. How much are you going to pay for the lessons? Now, I think in and around £25 an hour is what you should be paying for driving lessons. Now, obviously, this might sound expensive at first, but this involves the driving instructor's time, the driving instructor's expertise, the use of the driving instructor's car, petrol or diesel to fuel the driving instructor's car. So £25 an hour or 26 or somewhere around that mark is personally what you should be looking to pay. So you're paying the right money, you've got your instructor, you're in the right car, and you've took your lessons and you've had enough lessons so that you're confident to go and pass your test. And you've also got your theory test passed from earlier. So what you need to do now is book your practical test in. Now, it's important to note that you may book your practical test before you are ready, because a practical test may take weeks until you get a slot, because there are many people wanting to take a driving test. So you may want to book your test a few weeks before you think you'll be ready, because it may take a few weeks for your test to be ready for you to take it. So, and also, if you don't book your test until you're confident, which is perfectly fine, then what you may want to do is book a lesson, maybe just an hour, something simple, in between the wait time of when you're confident to pass your test and when you take your test. Because if you don't drive for a month, 6 weeks, something like that, you may be rusty, you may forget things, and you may lose confidence over that time. So I'd recommend try not to leave it more than 2 or 3 weeks when you're driving if you're trying to learn to pass your test. So this is the big one now. You are sat in a car, you are ready to take your practical test. However, the test doesn't actually start in your car like most people think. Your instructor can be with you as well if you want them to be. However, they won't really be able to speak. They will just be able to sit in the back of the car, mainly as a comforting thing, a calm down, a confidence booster type thing, but they won't really be saying anything to you, as the test should only be with you and your instructor. Your tester, is that the right word? I don't know. The person who basically, the examiner, that's the word. I almost forgot that then. But your examiner and you are the only people who are really going to be involved in that test, but your instructor can be there in the back seat if it makes you feel better. The test starts with a simple eye test. The examiner will ask you to read usually a number plate from, I'm not sure of the exact distance, but 9 times out of 10 there will be cars in and around your test centre. And also, that's another important thing, make sure your test is at your local test centre. You don't want to be driving ages to get to it. And they'll ask you to read a number plate. If you read it correctly, happy days, you're allowed to drive and you're allowed to go and take your test because you can see properly. If not, then it means that you may have to notify the DVLA of an eyesight problem or something like that. And it will, essentially, it's just a precautionary measure. So make sure that anyone who can pass a test can read a number plate from that distance away. Now with mine, funny story, I actually didn't read it properly the first time. I mistook, I think it was a V, I mistook it for a W, something simple like that. But if it's that sort of thing, then they're fine because they know you can read it, you're just getting a letter wrong. With my examiner, I got it wrong, obviously. I mistook a V for a W, and they said, can you try that again? And I looked again and I was like, oh no, that's a W, not a V. Or whichever way around it was, and that was completely fine. So don't stress if you get a letter wrong in your reading of the number plate. Basically, it's not the end of the world. Now, another important thing is, when I did my test, it was before the current regulations, and there was a show me question and a tell me question. Now, your instructor, as you're taking your lesson, should be running you through this and getting you prepared for this as well. And if they haven't done this, make sure to ask them, can you run me through, show me questions and tell me questions for the test. Now, when I did my test, they could not be done while you're in the car. However, now on the current regulations, you can be asked these questions while you're driving the car. Now, a show me question could be something like, show me how to turn your window washers on. So you'd physically do it and show the instructor and put your window washers on. A tell me question could be something you don't have to do, you just have to explain. So a tell me question could be, tell me what the washer fluid level should be in the car. Now, obviously, the answer for that one would be it should be full. And most of them, if it's a fluid question and you get stressed out, if you say it should be between the minimum and maximum levels, then you will get it right 9 times out of 10. So there's no need to worry about those questions. If you get stressed, just remember within the minimum and maximum, and you will get that question right. So these show me, tell me questions are important because it means that you have know-how around your car. It means you have know-how how to use your car, and you know in any situation when you're driving, you'll be able to do the correct thing in order to come through the situation. So, as I rudely put my hand up to the camera there, I'm very sorry about that. I had to get rid of a notification. So you've done the show me, tell me questions. Maybe it's a part of the test, maybe before the test, before you've started driving. It could be any time. Another thing that you'll have to do, I did not have to do this personally, so I don't know much about this, but I can say my thoughts. You, on the current regulations in the UK, part of your test, I believe it is 20 minutes, will be done following a Sat-Nav or satellite navigation device. Now that is as simple as it sounds, a Sat-Nav. So you know when you put your phone on or any other device and you type in somewhere where to go, and it tells you the directions of how to get to that place. That's basically what Sat-Nav is. So there will be a fixed Sat-Nav. Again, I've not had experience of this because when I passed my test, you did not need to do Sat-Nav driving. So Sat-Nav driving is, in my opinion, a lot easier than following your instructor, which we'll get onto in a minute. Sat-Nav driving, you follow where the Sat-Nav tells you to go, basically. So you can see, you can plan ahead. The Sat-Nav's going to tell me to turn left in a couple of minutes. I need to get ready and look for my turn left in a couple of minutes. Sat-Nav driving is your time to relax. Completely block out the examiner, pretend they're not there because you don't need to listen to them. All you're going to do is follow that Sat-Nav, focus on yourself, focus on your driving, and focus on following that Sat-Nav. Now, what happens if you make a mistake during following the Sat-Nav? You don't follow the Sat-Nav correctly. Well, I'm pretty sure this isn't an issue because you will also have to follow your examiner's instructions. So your examiner may say, at the next roundabout, take the second exit. If you are in the wrong lane, for example, but you safely go into the right exit for that lane, you'll be perfectly fine and your examiner will redirect you. I'm assuming it is exactly the same in a Sat-Nav. If you get the turn wrong on a Sat-Nav, it's completely fine as long as you do it in a safe manner. So if you don't put any other drivers in harm, then you will be completely fine if you make a mistake. Try not to panic, try to stay relaxed because 9 times out of 10, you will be fine. Another thing that people get worried about is hesitation. Now, hesitation is a minor fault on your driving test. There are minor faults and there are major faults. Now, major faults mean you fail your test completely if you get one of these. Minor faults are small faults, but you can get up to, I believe it's 16 of these before you fail your test. So really do not worry about these minor faults. If you see your examiner put a little tick on a piece of paper, just ignore it, because 9 times out of 10 it's a minor fault and you can get loads of them before you fail. So you've gone through, you've listened to your examiner, you've followed where you want them to go, you followed your Sat-Nav, and you've ignored any faults that you might be getting. What you want to do now is stay calm until the end of the test, and I think the most important thing while physically in your test is staying calm. Now, a few tips for again, your instructor should go through this in your lessons, but I'll say some now. A few tips for when you're in your test. Again, stay calm, stay calm, stay calm. That is the most important thing Do not panic. Do not try and rush. Just stick to your own, stick to your own car. It's your own road. This is your space, and you can have it. So please do not feel stressed out by any other drivers on the road, even though they can be idiotic at times, some of them. So basically, stay calm, stay relaxed. It's your test, it's your space and your car, and that's the most important thing you need to remember. Next is, if you ever, so one of the minor faults I got on the test I passed is I didn't indicate when leaving a parked road. Now, we were on a side road. There was no one about. Literally, you could see a tumbleweed. If this was a film, a tumbleweed would roll past. However, I didn't indicate, and therefore that's a minor fault. So always, if you're ever going to move from a stop position or turn or make anything, indicate is very important. Especially you BMW drivers. Sorry, I didn't mean that. BMWs are cool. Don't hurt me. Yeah, make sure you indicate. Another thing is mirrors. Now, you've got one mirror up the top, one mirror to your right, and one mirror to your left. Use these mirrors vigorously. Even if you don't think you need to use these mirrors, use these mirrors. Examiners love mirrors. Look in the mirrors. Look in the mirrors. Basically, overlook it. So do this. Like, you know how, like, normally when I'm looking in a mirror, I'll move my eyes, right? Move your head and look in the mirrors, because that will show your examiner that you are using your mirrors and you're doing things correctly. So move your head, look at the mirrors. And even if in your driving lessons you're not looking at the mirrors as much as you are in your test, that's a good thing. Always look in the mirrors in your test a lot more than you would in normal driving. Again, showing emphasis, showing the examiner that you want to pass his test, and you know that you've got the skills to pass his test because you're looking in the mirrors like you should be. Another thing, mainly mirrors is a big thing. So another thing also, don't speed. I actually failed my first driving test for speeding. I did 38 in a 30, and essentially I failed my test for it. Simple as that. You're allowed to, if you go 32 in a 30 and then slow back down to 30, they're not going to fail you for it. However, like I did, I thought the road was a 40. I went up to 38, therefore sticking under what I thought was the limit of 40, and I failed my test for it. That's an unfortunate thing to do, so try not to speed. Also, another tip, if you're unsure of the speed limit of the road, if there are no signs at all on the road, it is a 30. That's one very important thing to remember. If there's no signs, it's a 30. Simple as that. So if you cannot see a road sign telling you it's a 40 or a 50 or a national speed limit, all of which you'll learn in your theory test, then it is a 30 miles an hour speed limit zone here in the UK. That's one thing that I forgot. I thought the road was a 40. I had no signs to check from, so I believed myself that it was a 40. Unfortunately, I was wrong and I failed my first test for it. So that's an important thing. Try not to speed in your driving test. Also, speaking of failing tests, that is not something to be embarrassed about. If you fail your first driving test, just like I did, it's completely fine. You fail your second driving test, that's completely fine. You fail your third driving test, that's completely fine. As long as you keep your head high, learn from your mistakes, try not to make them in the next test, and improve yourself as a driver for the next one, and you will pass your test, and you will be allowed to drive on the UK roads. So I think I've covered everything. If there are some things that you guys want to know that I haven't covered in this video, please let me know in the comment section below, and I will try and respond to you in the comments. I try and respond to all the comments I get in the video, so please, if there's anything, do comment and I will try and help as best I can. I hope this video has been helpful for you all, and I hope that you have learned something, and I also hope that you will also be able to pass your test if you haven't already with the help of this video. So that's it from me in today's video. I hope you have enjoyed it. Please subscribe if you haven't already, and all that good YouTube stuff, and I will see you in the next one.